JTAdventures. Today we're going to be experimenting water beads, also known as Orbeez. And if you have watched Mr. Beast, and we're not going to fill up a backyard yet. Not yet, but we might in another video.
The background for today's experiment is the process of osmosis. You probably don't know what that is, John Thomas, but...
I'm just shaking my head for some reason. I don't even know. But...
Okay, osmosis is the movement of water across a membrane.
Oh, I knew that, but I didn't remember.
Okay. So what we're going to test in this, we know water can move into Orbeez, but what if you put Orbeez in salty water? Will the water stay where the salt is?
Besides, you can also do this at the beach by probably, if you have a water bottle and you drink all the water, get some water from the sea and get some in the bottle and buy Orbeez if you can at the beach.
Okay, so yes, we're doing a lab simulation of John Thomas's beach experiment, but we're going to do that here at home. Let's point out the things that we have to do our experiment. First, we have, of course, our water beads. These were found at Walmart. They're about $10 for this container, and they can expand up to 6 times their small little bead size. So they get pretty big, about the size of a grape. We have salt, also found at Walmart. We have measuring cup for the salt and the beads. We have 2 small Pyrex beakers, and they're both 400 milliliters. 1 larger beaker, and just so we feel like this is more of a science experiment, we have to throw in a flask. So we're going to use these in just a moment. And John Thomas, I want you to draw for us kind of the sample of our experiment, kind of like what you enjoy on Mythbusters Jr. Let's draw out our experiment on paper so we have a plan. Science is not about having all the answers. It's just about having a plan so we get the answers. You may also notice that John Thomas has some really cool goggles on today because we're all about safety. All right, at this point, John Thomas is drawing us a mock-up of our experiment. He's going to put 2 beakers on his paper. He's going to label 1 beaker A and 1 beaker B. Okay, and we know we're going to fill both beakers with what?
Water.
Water.
1 is going to be salt water.
That's right. That we call that our variable. Water is what we're putting in both, but we're going to add salt. What else are we going to put in our beakers?
Water beads, also known as Orbeez.
Okay, Orbeez. So 1 is our control. That'll be beaker A. So if you can label this beaker A, can you write on that, right there on that white area? That's what it's meant for. This will mark, it'll come off later on. Just put an A as good as you can. It's kind of hard to write on a beaker. Yeah, on glass. All right, perfect. Now put a B on this one, just like the B you put on your paper there. Perfect. All right. So now we're getting to the part of the experiment where we're actually dealing with chemicals that could hurt you.
Yeah, so what?
So you got something on your head you might want to go ahead and put on. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the same amount of Orbeez or water beads in each container. Can you use that measuring cup right there and put the same amount in each beaker?
And what Daddy said, I don't know, I forgot the name, but if there's like something in science, if you're doing something with chemicals, like real chemicals, you need to do this.
Oh, you waft the, yes, you waft the solution. We were talking a little bit about science earlier before the video. So try to get it pretty even. You can use your finger and push the beads off the top, run it across even over the container. There you go.
Which one do you want me to put it in?
You can go either way first.
We are gonna start with
Wow, that's a lot. Okay, now do the same amount.
Of salt?
Nope. First of the other cup. Great job. So we're done with the water beads. You can close that container for now.
And you might want to put your dogs up because it might kill your dogs.
That's right. We want to be careful with the Orbeez or the water beads. We don't know what they would do to an animal.
Yeah.
So you don't see John Thomas's dog ear right now.
Well, probably. Well, it's actually nighttime, and so we're gonna do another part of the video tomorrow.
Okay, so I want you to use that large beaker you have in your hands right there and fill it up with warm water. We're gonna use warm water in a moment with the salt, but go ahead, this is our control. And which beaker will the control be? No salt is in what letter? A, that's right. A is our control. We're just using warm water. Go ahead and fill it up. It doesn't matter, this part. Go ahead and fill it up. Okay, that's good. And you're gonna come over to your control, beaker A, and I want you to fill it up to 300 milliliters. 300.
Carefully so I don't accidentally seal it.
That's right. Fill it up to the line to 300.
Oop.
At this point, we're going to transition to the salt. This is going to be for our beaker B. That's not our control. Our beaker B has a variable. And I told John Thomas earlier that our variable is what we change. So he's filling up the measuring cup with salt. And salt is our solute. It's going to be what we dissolve in the liquid. And even though it dissolves in the liquid, the water, the solvent, this on the molecular level, on the smallest level, is still present in that water. You just may not be able to see it with your eyes. All right, so you tamp that down even though you didn't have to, that was okay. Now pour it into our flask, okay? Now if we were grown-ups or if we were in a high school or college lab, we would probably figure out the exact concentration of salt we want. That means how much salt to put in exactly, and we would use a scale to do that. But right now we don't have to do that. Get one more scoop of salt because we want to try this variable with a lot of salt. Extra salty. You're doing a great job. All right, that's perfect. All right, so pour that into our flask. You're a great junior scientist right there. All right, you can put that in the sink. We're done with that part. All right, that's for cleanup later. All right, come back over to the water faucet and we're gonna use warm water. And you remember that swishing motion that I showed you earlier? A flask is designed to be able to do that swishing motion so that you can dissolve that. So we're gonna put warm water in there. Again, yeah, we wanna keep things the same. The only thing we added to the water this time was salt. Don't fill it up all the way. That's right. You're doing the right motion. You can do it a little bit harder, like a bigger circle. Good, very good. All right, so I'm gonna help you and make sure we get that all dissolved, and then the next step, we'll pour it into our beaker. So John Thomas has continued to mix the flask solution, or the solution in the flask.
It kind of looks like a tornado, and the salt kind of looks like stuff from the earth, and it gets into the tornado.
Yeah. You can tell we've been watching James Spann lately with severe weather. So shout out to James Spann, but That vortex is what's allowing you to mix that in there. Now I want you to look inside that liquid. Don't slosh it now. And you can get close and look at that liquid. Do you still see the salt?
Not very much.
No, it's hard to see it.
Well,
and
it looks like on the bottom. There's salt in it, but it's on the bottom.
It's on the bottom from you sitting it on the counter, yeah. So now we're gonna pour that into our water beads, okay? Let's go ahead and pour it in. Up to 300 milliliters. You don't have to pour all of that flask.
What's that?
300.
I gotta get down because I can't really see the 300 milliliters.
So now we have our 2 beakers set up, and our next step is going to be our observation phase. So let's make some observations of our experiment, okay? So just like we were talking earlier, we're at the observation part of our experiment where we get to see the science in action. Do we know what's gonna happen?
Not very much.
We have a little information.
Well, what I think if the salt container, it probably would suck the Orbeez would suck up the salt with it, and it would get extra bigger from its size.
That's one idea. That's true. It could take the salt and the water in and make it extra salty, so maybe they get bigger than they normally would.
And another thing I thought was, when we were talking before the video, what I thought could get bigger and it would make a big explosion.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, what I know from my science background is that we already see right here in our 2 different containers, we see beaker A. What can you tell me about beaker A?
Beaker A, I can't remember much, but I think it has some salt in it.
Beaker A was our control. That means no salt. Beaker B had what?
Salt in it.
And beaker B took a little bit longer for us to make, but what can we notice about beaker A already?
They are kind of growing.
They're growing. They're already higher up, aren't they? So we're going to have to give it some time, and we'll come back tomorrow in the morning and see where they're at and see what we can observe.
Actually, I think they're growing up bigger, actually. This side is going up bigger.
We're back at the conclusion of the experiment. That was at about 8 o'clock last night, and it's almost 6 o'clock now. So that's what? 10 hours. After 10 hours, you can see, John Thomas, in beaker A, which is that one. Remember that one?
No salt.
No salt, that's right. We called that, do you remember it starts with a C? Not our variable, but our... Control, very good.
Mommy said it.
Okay.
In science.
All right. And then in our B, we had a salty, or you could say saline solution. In science, we would maybe call that a hypertonic solution. And instead of the Orbeez soaking up the liquid like this one, they just got a little bit bigger. So you may have been right in your prediction.
Yes.
You said maybe some of the salt could get through. We hope you enjoyed our experiment. John Thomas really loved practicing experimental design, and we also learned about variables and how we have a control. He got to use real scientific equipment, and he even wore goggles for the first time. So hope you enjoyed it. Check out our video. If you have any other ideas about science experiments, we love STEM. Be sure to comment below.